2010, people who were all colleagues at Wipro came together and decided to go on a new professional journey. And this is a professional journey where they wanted to combine their technological know-how, their business acumen with social impact. And that's how NextWealth was formed, with an intention of creating a community where one can do good as well as be good. And today, as of 2024, an enterprise that has started in 2010 has over 11 centers, 5,000 people, and their revenues have gone from 0 to 250 crores. And there is a couple of things they do that are very, very unique. The first thing is that it is all technology based. They're looking at human in the loop. So when you look at artificial intelligence, a lot of technologies like this, it seems like, hey, are they going to replace human beings? In fact, they're proving that these technologies need a human intervention. So their business model is based on adopting new technologies and having humans in the loop that will make a difference. The second thing is, most of these centers are not in major metros. They are in smaller towns like Chittoor and Udaipur and Salem, etc. But they're done with so much sophistication that a small town audience, a small town employees experience what it is to work in a world-class environment. So today we are going to go on a journey with the founders and also the new generation of leadership that's built NextWealth so far and is going to take it into the future to continue on their purpose of doing well while doing good. The Indian IT industry today in 2024 is over $200 billion industry, contributes to over 7% of GDP, employs over 5 million people. And it all started about 50 years ago. And the person we have with us today, Dr. Mita, is someone who's been part of this journey from the beginning. He's been one of the pioneers of this as part of Wipro. He has done so much to this industry that's much beyond a company. And today we are here to talk about the current journey, which is NextWealth. Dr. Mita, welcome. So you've done many things so far that open the doors for Indian talent across the globe. What are your biggest learnings out of this?
Thanks, Lakshmi. See, when I joined Wipro, at the time 1980s, the Indian IT industry was highly centralized, kind of controlled by the either government or public sector. For the first time in 1980, the government decided to allow private sector to come into computers. Because this, as you remember, IBM left in 1977, there was a vacuum and government wanted to do something different. And Wipro, along with few other companies, were licensed to design, manufacture computers. So one of the good things about India at that time is we didn't have any baggage. So we were starting the industry from scratch. So we have the ability to use the latest in technology rather than take the path of IBM, Digital and all other such companies, which has to protect their earlier investments and by the company and their customers. So we designed a new class of mini computers, which are open systems based on Intel microprocessors and which had very high price performance. And also it had many other features which were not common in the mini computers of that time.
How did you get the first account? Like, what were the things you really learned about how to open doors?
When we were designing computers in India, for India, using microprocessors, whereas Intel at that time was essentially seen as a PC company. What is the difference? A PC is a personal productivity tool, whereas a mini computer is an enterprise computer. So people at Intel were very a kind of a surprise to see how a microprocessor can be used for a mini computer. Our first mission was Wipro Series 86 based on 8086 processor. It supported 16 terminals, it supported online data processing, database operating system, and all those things which were never heard of in Intel's kind of a scheme of things. So even though we are a very small company from India, which is unknown, but they took interest to see the progress we are making. So that gave us the opening. So every year I used to go to Intel and ask them, what is your next processor, what are the new features you are going to introduce, and all those things. They were so impressed with Wipro and what it has achieved. So they used to always treat us as a preferred manufacturer, along with people like IBM, Compaq, NCR, and all those things. We used to get a lot of advanced product information and early samples, engineering samples, which allowed us to be ahead of competition.
You know, Dr. Mehta, after your foray with Wipro, E4E, all those things, you really wanted to do something with social impact. Why did you think of this company, and why was social impact so important for you?
So before venturing into NextWealth, we did a lot of research. So there is a need for social action which helps people. My experience, which is 50 years, where I have set up companies, created value, business value, created employment, and it is win-win for all the people. And we are bound by structure of the company law, legal structures, financial structures, metrics, and all other things. So best way to create value, not only for business but also for social, is through a company. Secondly, I can use all my experience and connections, which I developed over the period of time, for this benefit. So that made me to go for a regular private limited company, which is governed by all the existing rules and regulations, and do the same thing.
So how did the name NextWealth come about?
Okay. See, I am associated with Professor C.K. Prahalad, considered to be the best thinker in the world for a long time. Whereas C.K. Prahalad told that the best practices are best yesterday. Tomorrow they may not be best. You have to invent next practices. So that was his kind of a thing which he used to preach. And it was in my mind, because we are trying to do in NextWealth something different from what other people have done before. It should be next practice of creating wealth or business. So we applied to register of companies for the name Next Practice, but they did not give it. So the next best we used NextWealth. So that's how.
You guys have done this in a bootstrapped way. You didn't take any venture capital money. Why is that?
Yeah. See, the purpose of NextWealth is to create employment for graduates in small towns, focusing on women. So creating employment is the main issue. Whereas if you take a typical for-profit company, profit is the motive. To get profit, they need revenues. To get revenues, they need people. Whereas in NextWealth, we want to provide employment. When you provide employment, you get revenues. When you get revenues, you get profit. So these are different kind of a structure. But when the venture capitalists invest money, or any other investor, for them profit is the motive. So there is a conflict. So there is no point in taking money from an investor whose objective is different, which is profit, from our purpose, which is providing employment. So even if it takes longer time to grow, we want to put our own money and then slowly grow without sacrificing or compromising on our purpose.
You've had the good fortune of having someone along with you from your Wipro days. So we'll go back in time to Wipro a little bit. For that, I'd like to invite Professor Talwai to join us.
Thank you, Lakshmi.
From a NextWealth point of view, you took a very you took a very positive decision. It's going to be about impact. Dr. Mitra talked about it. So how did you actually go about implementing it? Because we are talking about strategy, etc. So what was your strategic decision right at the beginning of how would you expand? How would you measure the metrics? What was your thought on it?
Yeah, I think the first part was we created what is called an entrepreneur-led distributed delivery model. So all the centers are distributed, only head office is in Bangalore because of customer acquisition and expertise available. But all the delivery happens through small town centers. And we had developed each of the small town center in partnership with a local entrepreneur. Local means he's a qualified person, has a corporate experience, worked in India and abroad for some time. He knows how to deal with the customers and all that. But he has got he's socially embedded in his small town. He wants to do something in a small town. I remember when we started Wipro, only we and Infosys were there. But that entrepreneurship built up so many companies in Bangalore. I mean, so same thing we want to do in smaller towns with these local entrepreneurs. So with that, they get 74% equity in the company. It's a legal entity, separate legal entity. And they have because they're socially embedded, they can take local talent to avoid migration and all that and create jobs there and upskill them. That's how we started the whole thing. Then we said these organizations called Do Good and Do Well. Yes. Okay, they are for profit, but maybe lesser profit, and they do well. They have social impact creation. In US at that point of time, some companies came like Triple LC, low profit LC corporations. So those kind of things came in. So I took that as the model, and we said we build this. And since all the centers are distributed, we created a distributed model in the cloud at that time. In technology-wise, because we come from a strong technology background, cloud of people are just accepting it, but we said we'll build a company on cloud.
So you took the latest technology and said, this is what we're going to build up on.
We didn't have any legacy part. We did that issue. And then later on, and we created an NextWealth platform. From day one, this is where the professional thing and institutional building started. So our whole model was connecting global customers to resources and capabilities in small towns. Very simple.
So thank you for your time, and we'll continue the conversation. Thanks. So in the journey of NextWealth, we spoke about the founders and how they started the company and how they started with a vision of doing well while doing good. Now, what's important for a vision is someone who makes that vision a reality. So with that, Maithili, welcome.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about some of the milestones. What was the first milestone you had? All of you said, yep, we are starting this. You're one of the co-founders. We are starting this. And then what happened? What was the first milestone?
Growing from, when you put it that way, growing from 0 to 5,000 people and 0 to 250 crores plus people, there have been a lot of ups and downs. So it comes with its own pains, but brickbats as well as bouquets. So the first customer that we had, that was our first milestone, was a customer in the healthcare space. And we got work which was, and one thing that is actually sort of, I would say, is the character of NextWealth is doing things we have never done before. And I would say second is a can-do attitude and also resilience. So when this particular customer came to us.
Sorry, there's one more thing I want to say. I think you always looked at future technologies, because a lot of time when people think of going to small towns, helping people, especially women, they may get into, tailoring or beauty parlor, that kind of stuff. But you always said from the beginning, it's going to be about cutting edge tech. So tell us a little bit about this healthcare customer you had, what kind of technology they needed, and how did you train the people in this town?
That's very important, because the work that they gave us was medical coding. And medical coding is the toughest in the revenue cycle management, because it requires about 4 months of training and it requires a certification at the end of it. So 4 months of training and then the certification, because you have to be very much aware of the ICD-10 codes in the US, and there are many of those, thousands of those codes. So first was we had to ramp up to 250 people, we had to train them over a period of 4 months, and then get them up to the, ramp them up to the metrics that the client wanted. We managed to do all that, and one of the things that I have seen is the productivity of the people here, and this was an eye opener for me as well, because the productivity of the people here was far higher than what I had seen even in my earlier organization, and that is purely because of the attitude and the commitment of the people here, and especially
in the small towns.
in the small towns, and that was an eye opener for me. But the milestone here was not about getting this. We had to ramp up to 250 people. We did that. We ran it well for 2 years. We met all the metrics consistently. But since this was the first large customer for us, there were a lot of challenges. So almost every week I used to be in Malasamudram, Salem, right? Every Friday I would go, and we would sit and debate on why is the productivity not coming up to the mark? Why is the quality not coming up to the mark? Got into the details, and it was complex because each of the employees had to remember the various parameters for over 108 hospitals, and you don't know which hospital volume is going to come today. So we had to do a lot of design. We created the factory model. We then created saying that each person has a primary set of hospitals, secondary set of hospitals, and for those 108 hospitals they had to remember some 35-40 parameters. How do they remember that? So we said there are only 5 or 6 things which are varying. So we created a variability matrix, gave that to the employees. And one eye opener was when I actually sat with one of the people to really try and do the work. I asked her, what is your quality level? She said, my quality level is 85%, and she was very happy because it's like, you know, your second PU marks or your undergrad marks, 85% is great. Then we had to I had to tell her why 98% is important and not 85%. 85% is not good enough. So training them to that level and bringing up E4E to that level was a huge task by itself.
But when something like COVID comes, which is not planned at all, how did that affect you, and what did you learn out of that?
So that itself is a big story. I think it's one of the, I would say, the key milestone areas for NextWealth, because you know there was a lot of talk about COVID. It started Jan 2020, and people were all talking about, you know, people didn't realize the scale or the magnitude of what was going to hit. But March 2020 beginning, we sort of said, okay, if this happens, we will have to work from home. So let's start experimenting with whether people can work from home or not. And remember, in small towns, people are working from one-room houses. So which means, you know, one room is the bedroom, the hall, and then there is a kitchen attached, and everybody is there in that room. So you have to work in that sort of an environment. And these locations, we didn't even know whether connectivity was there. So March beginning, we started to experiment with USB tethering and mobile hotspot and so on. We had experimented, and we had said that we will sort of start moving 10% of the people to work from home, starting from March 22nd or something. Over a period of 6-8 weeks, we will have them working from home. And then I think it was a Friday, and I still remember that, one of our largest clients, he called up and from Udaipur, and he said, you know, the police are coming and closing off our offices. Is that happening to you in your centers? I said, no, it is not happening to us. But an alarm bell went off. I said, if that is happening in the client's location, which was in Rajasthan, it can happen to us as well. And here we are planning, you know, 10% over some 6-7 weeks. And so then we were on multiple, you know, everyday calls with the centers to see what is happening on the ground and what action do we take and so on. Sunday was at Bharat Bandh, and then we said, post Bharat Bandh, let's just move everybody, 100% of the people, to work from home in 48 hours. Now, so Bharat Bandh happened, finished at 8 o'clock, I think, that night on Sunday. People started moving their equipment home, you know, autos and cycles and tempos, and carrying it home. They moved it home, and we had already tested out, saying whether it works from home or not. We had a set of people to go to their houses, set it up and keep it running. Tuesday night, 8 o'clock, the Bandh was announced. By that time, we had 95%, almost 100% of our people working from home, tested and ready. And I think if we had not done that, which happened to some of our clients, we would have probably managed to get about 20-25% to work from home, because after that, you remember, everything was a total shutdown. Nobody was allowed on the roads. If that had happened and only 25% of our people had been working from home, we would have just not been there. I mean, NextWealth would have been a struggle to get back on track, which is what happened to actually one of our clients. So out of 1,500 people they managed to get 300 people home. Remaining transactions were not happening, but they had to do the transactions. This was real time. It was an ID, identity verification company. So they had all their employees, including the CEO, doing transactions because work had to continue. And that's when they said, we have actually been caught on the wrong foot. Do you think you can take on some of the work? We said yes. So during COVID time, we added 1,000 people for this client by remotely recruiting, remotely interviewing, remotely getting people trained, ramping up and meeting the quality in a real time environment with the sort of risk and compliance, security required PCI DSS security level. So we did that during COVID time, and then again illustrating the fact that we have done things which we have not done before. So this was something we had never done before. So this was another. So during that COVID time of about 1.5 years, we grew to about 1,000 people for them, and then they had this crypto storm that happened, and volumes for them went up through the roof, 30-40% it went up. And then they came back to us and said, can you recruit 300, I think it was 300 people in 3 weeks time. We have never done it physically when we are all working from office. Now to do it remotely, but we said yes, we always say yes, and then we'll go and figure out how to make it happen. So we recruited 300 in 3 weeks time the same way, and we are ramped up, and of course I think 6 months or 7 months later they ramped down as well, but that also we had to manage.
So what's your next goal?
So let's take a look at where we are today. Okay, so the growth is in terms of numbers or in terms of the services. It is also in terms of the impact, right? So if you look at it that way, we started off with initially being just like any other BP organization and just growing, focusing on the people part of it. Then we went into data, content and data, when we had this large retail customer, and we realized that data is the new oil. Therefore, we need to, whoever has the data has the power, and so we looked at data analytics and so on. 5 years back, we moved into AI/ML data services, specifically into computer vision, natural language processing, and structured and semi-structured data, because we realized that AI/ML is the next, it's a new future. So we looked at the AI/ML, which we went into 5 years back. Now going forward, all of us know about Gen AI and the revolution that it is creating in the last 2 years. So our focus going forward, one is in terms of services, will be on the human in the loop and the human eval part for AI and Gen AI. That is number one in terms of services. Number two, in terms of people, we set a vision for ourselves that we should grow to 10,000 people by 2025 financial year end. So 2026 March, growing 2.5 times in 2.5 years. That's the vision we set for ourselves when we have 4,000 people. So we need to grow. So that's the next immediate milestone, you can say. Revenues is always a fallout. So if we do the number of people, whatever may be the revenues, we are okay by, because we are looking at the social impact of what we are providing jobs to people. We also want to build an SME academy, which is like centers of excellence in each of these areas. So that's something that we want to build. So if we want to get to the 10,000 people and beyond in the next 2 years, I think it is important to build the capability, build the competency, and build that foundation. And if you build leaders like that, they can take the organization forward.
Yeah, it's, I think, to wrap up, it's sort of to say competency at every level is important. When someone comes in, how do you train them? And they've been there for a while, how do you do something else? And then how do you train them on a certain mindset so they can keep learning? So congratulations for someone who's put this through, saw this through, and made sure every center is equally good.
Yeah.
And I think, I must say, I think it's about getting the human beings to attain their best potential, because if they're doing well, you can keep giving promotions to them, etc.
Exactly.
So great talking to you.
Thank you, Lakshmi.
Thank you.
Lovely talking to you as well.
Yeah. At NextWealth, after the 4 founders have started it, for the first time they have a new person coming in to take over as the CEO. And it's Madhu, and he's somebody who's been the COO of Mu Sigma for many years and doubled the profitability there, and been very instrumental in the tech field, but really somebody who's passionate about technology and its marriage to social impact. So what better company to join than NextWealth on the next journey of NextWealth beyond its founders. With that, we have Madhu with us to talk about his plans for NextWealth.
Thank you, Lakshmi.
Sure.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Madhu, I wanted to ask, you're someone who's very passionate about artificial intelligence, ML, you've been talking about human in the loop, etc. So, what attracted you to this company, and what aspect of it are you really focusing on now?
Right. So, I think the thing that clearly, like you said, the AI revolution, if you were to use that phrase, and then the role of humans in that, and I'll talk to that in a moment. But I think what also attracted me to this company was just the, I think the purity of intent of the founders, where I feel, Dr. Mehta, Maithili, A.T., all of them have started and stayed with NextWealth for 15 years with a very clear purpose and mission, right? And I think at least the way I have processed that mission that they started off, which obviously they look at creation of employment in small towns. I see that kind of rooted in, so there's this book that I read called Capital by a French economist called Thomas Piketty, and in that he talks a lot about inequality, right? And then inequality exists in many different ways. One of the aspects of inequality is inequality of opportunity, right? And I think that is something where, and again, there is wealth inequality, income inequality, inequality of opportunity specifically. I think, you can talk about it at a global level where there's immigration and various other things that happen as a result of that. I think at the more micro level at which we operate, I think where NextWealth was rooted in was trying to take the opportunity to the small towns, right? And create employment opportunities for people who are qualified, have worked hard, earned college degrees, but either don't have the ability or willingness to move to big cities to pursue employment. So that's kind of the thing that I think the core thing that first, struck me about NextWealth.
So let's talk a little bit about this human in the loop, okay? If you look at artificial intelligence, I mean, obviously it's a collection of data, it's learning from, and it is telling you that I think this is what you may want, etc. And it depends on the data, and as we all know, today the data is not very diverse, it's a lot of work needs to be done, etc. Give me an example of how human intervention, how the humans are training the data, because when we say human in the loop, it is humans contributing to it, it could be humans testing it, it's the humans training it, all sorts of things. Can you take an example of, say, if we order something online and what exactly happens? Just take one industry and walk us through an example of something you do right now.
Sure. So, you use the term training a couple of times. So, let me maybe take a step or give you a perspective on that, right? The way we understand, and this again, some of this is informed from general knowledge, some of it is actual work that we do at NextWealth today. The role of human, and when I say human, again, we're not talking about the ML engineers who are actually building the models, but the people who are subject matter experts or knowledgeable about whatever task it is that the AI is trying to do. We see that essentially in broadly in two parts. One is when you're training the model, right? So when you're training the model, you need to either collect the data or curate it or label and annotate it, enrich it in different forms. I think that part is still relatively well understood, or at least it's somewhat known or accepted that you need some level of human intervention to kind of help you clean up that data. I think the part that is actually less well understood, but I found very fascinating when I come across these kind of examples in the work that we do, is when you deploy the AI model in production, right? In order for you to use it, because it is it has a propensity to hallucinate, or it's basically guessing based on whatever patterns it's seen in the data, there is a good chance that it can make wrong guesses, or some non-negative chance that it can make wrong guesses. And there what we further see is that there are two scenarios where how do you deal with that happens in two different ways. One is if at every inference level, which is a single AI model or an AI output, has to be 100% reliable, right, where there is no tolerance for error. What happens is you need, typically you will have the AI, you will give the input, the AI model will give you an output. The output will many times come with a confidence score as to, is this 90% confident, 99% confidence and so on. And depending on the application, you will then pass them through, either all or some of them, through a human filter before you actually serve the result to the end.
So it's
user or the
100%
customer.
at the end.
So at that 100%, you kind of make sure that there is a human who otherwise would have done the entire process with a human lens. You now are taking the human part and only applying it in either that reduced portion of the work or a reduced fraction of the inferences, right? And an example of where we do this, for example, is nowadays there's a lot of KYC, know your customer kind of process that happen digitally, where people upload a picture of their driving license or take a selfie photo or a selfie video and upload that as proof of identity. Now, and most people who are requesting that have a layer of AI that is either doing an ACR or a facial recognition or something like that to kind of capture the, validate the identity. And those models come with a certain level of confidence in how accurate the results are. And they typically send it to a human in those corner cases or for a final layer of review. And here you're taking what would be a person entirely reviewing the ID physically to a big chunk of that happening through AI and a small portion of that happening with humans. So that is one example where you need 100% reliability, and you kind of insert a human in the loop in real time for each transaction.
So the machine is doing 70-80% of the job, which would have been done by a human being, and the last 20% of just make sure if I'm saying yes, it's a yes. If it's a no, that piece is done by a human. So it's quickly seeing and saying yes, no,
right,
kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Okay, got
right.
it.
And in these kind of processes, what we typically see is we have like a 70-second or less than 70-second service level agreement within which the human review has to happen, right? And there's and for that our associates are trained in identity documents from globally. So we have teams that are trained on driving licenses, passports, national ID cards, educational certificates, various forms of documents for East Asia, because they have different fonts or different styles of looking at things, for Eastern Europe, for India, Africa, and so on. Right? So there's different. So that's a whole skill set, and that's a skilled workforce that we are providing for this sort of a task.
Tell me a little bit about the social impact and behavioral impact you see happening in the towns where you've been working.
I think what I have noticed are, I would probably put them in a couple of broad areas, right, and then maybe dive deeper in that. One is within the work environment itself, right? So within the work environment, what I've seen is a certain level of what it is like to work in a professional environment. Is not something that these people. It's not like a lot of us who grew up with parents who are going to offices are kind of used to a certain way of behavior, right, in a family. More than 50% of our employees, their parents are daily wage earners, right? Because they're not necessarily even from the small towns, they're from the villages around the small towns, and they are either doing a daily wage as a laborer or but they're not in a profession, right, in a what you would call a white collar job sort of or a regular job kind of a thing. So just for them to kind of on the one hand have the social dignity that comes with, okay, I have a regular source of income, I have a place that I go to where people are expecting me to show up, I spend this amount of time, I sit in an air conditioned office, work on a computer, right, and I have a lanyard that gives me an identity, right. A lot of these things that we tend to take for granted, right, I always took for granted because I kind of grew up in that environment. When you go and spend time in these locations with our associates, you say that itself is a transformative change around a certain expectation of, okay, how do you become part of this society where there is a predictable income source through a regular employment opportunity that's created, which gives you also a level of social dignity, right?
So I think, you know, you were talking about from a social point of view, from a talent, you know, point of view, and from a future technology point of view. You know, how do you embrace more and more of that and
Right.
stay abreast?
And how do we kind of
etc.?
stay at the, you know, we believe genuinely that in our own very unique way, we are kind of at the tip of what is really possible in the world with AI, right? I mean, we are not building models, we are not, you know, OpenAI, or we don't have a chat GPT or those kind of products, but anybody who's doing that is working closely with someone like us, and through that we have our own unique lens as to what are the opportunities and what are the challenges of bringing that to life in the real world.
Yeah. So I think the future of NextWealth is in the hands of you and the team. I mean, it's wonderful. The founders are very, very involved on a day-to-day basis, but they also have given it to you to take it to the next level. So best of luck, and may NextWealth have many more centers, more importantly, impact many more lives.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.